And we have everybody we're going to have tonight, so let's go ahead and call the meeting to order and start with a roll call.
David Foley here.
Gary Israel.
Vance Garwood.
Peter Fox.
Clint Tynert here.
Very good. Let's move on then to the minutes from January 16th.
Mr. Chairperson, I, Gary Israel, make a motion that we approve the minutes from the January 16th Board, or Planning Commission and Board of Zoning Appeals as presented.
Thank you, Gary. Do we have a second?
I have a second.
Second by Dave. All those in favor say aye.
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 Sorry. Opposed, nay. All right, motion passes. Let's move on then to the committee and staff reports.
We have nothing to report beyond the reports themselves.
Okay. Any commission members have any questions?
No.
No.
None.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Let's go ahead and then move on to agenda item 5.1, which would be the officer and committee nominations. So we technically need to make nominations and vote on the positions for this calendar year. And we have a 3-year term, if I recall correctly. Isn't that right? Okay. So I this is my second meeting as a chairperson. Who do we have as a vice chair at this time? We don't even have one right now, right?
Right.
That's what
Marla had agreed to serve in that capacity.
Okay. Marla did? Okay.
So do we need a motion?
Yes, you need motions and votes on all of the positions, and then just appointments of subdivision committee members.
Okay.
Okay.
So I would think we could just do a slate of everybody and vote at the same time, right?
You can make it all as one, or you can do them individually if you want to debate.
So we need chair, which I can sure do unless someone else wants to do it. This is only my second meeting doing it after Eric. And Marla is going to be vice chair
Unless somebody else wants to.
unless someone else wants to. Okay. All
And
right.
I can continue on as secretary.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairperson, I make a motion that Vance Garwood be chairperson, Marla Camfield be vice chair, and Gary Israel be secretary.
Thank you, Gary. We have a second.
I'll second that.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion at all? No. Hearing none. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. All right. Motion passes. Now we need to talk about subdivision committee. So that would be until May of 2024 or successors have been appointed. Is that right?
Correct. We're kind of filling some positions that were left by vacancies.
Yeah. So I've been on planning commission pretty much on subdivision pretty much since I've been on planning commission for the last, I think, 2 years. Gary knows this and Marla does too, because she's been on it, but subdivision is a little more hands-on. Not that it takes any more time, because it really doesn't. We usually meet on the first Tuesday at 5:30 and second Tuesday, excuse me.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're usually out of there in 30 minutes, right, Gary? There's been once or twice where it's
An
probably a
hour.
couple times in the last 2 years where we've taken over an hour and a half, but it's normally 30 to 45 minutes. And for myself, at least, when we come to these planning commission meetings, most of what we talk about here we've seen in subdivision. And it's kind of a rehash really. And it's really, you can really learn a lot in subdivision. I think we've usually had 3 to 4 on subdivision.
Right. 3 is the minimum.
Minimum.
by the bylaws.
Yeah. So Marla's willing to continue. I guess I didn't ask her. Do you know? I didn't ask her. Just assume she is.
I believe she's willing to stay on.
Okay. And Gary?
Willing to continue to serve there.
Okay. Any of the 3 of you gentlemen want to be on it?
I would like to.
Great. All right.
David?
Nope.
How many do you need?
I'd be happy to pitch in.
Okay.
I've had a lot of experience with subdivision, so.
Sounds good. So that'd be 5 if I stay on. I could step back this year and the 4 of you take it
Right, taking on the role of the chairman, that's a little more work for you, so.
a little bit. Staff makes it pretty doable, but I would be more than fine with that. Is that okay with you, Gary?
Yeah,
You and Marla and 2 of you gentlemen? That'd be 4. Even if 1 or 2 are missing, that leaves 2 to 3 left. So we could do that.
we need a motion for that.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Chairperson, I, Gary Israel, make a motion that for the subdivision committee, we have Marla Camfield, Jerry Fox, and Clint
Tyner,
Tyner, and Gary Israel.
Thank you, Gary. Do we have a second?
Dan, I'll second that.
Thank you, Dave. Second by Dave. Any discussion? Nope. All right. Seeing none. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion passes.
And
Well,
Mr. Chairperson, it was brought up in our last subdivision meeting that if there might be a possibility of the planning commission meeting during the day or later afternoon and not so late in the evening. I don't know if we want to discuss that or, but it was brought up in subdivision.
I'm open to talking about it. I think the challenge would be the members of the public could have a hard time getting there. And I'd sure personally prefer during the day. It doesn't take us away from our family, but I think it would be a challenge for the members of the public who are here to serve. But I'm definitely open to other communication. I'd prefer it, Gary, but I'm not sure it will work.
I'm just bringing up what was brought up in subdivision.
Yeah, well, yeah, we did talk about it. You're right.
And we can forward that notion along to the governing body for them to contemplate. It would require a change in our ordinance.
I think we just keep it the way it is.
Sounds good for now. Well, I guess we're done, ready to move on to agenda item 5.2. Thanks for everybody for willing to pitch in and help out.
Sure.
Appreciate it, Clinton,
You're welcome.
Peter. Let's move on to then 5.2, which is a lot split at 534 North Phillip. This is a prime example of something we saw in subdivision last week, and pretty straightforward, but go ahead, staff.
I just lost my agenda. Computer locked up.
Gary, could you hand me that pen? Sorry. Mine gave out and the one that's here is not very good.
As I explained in the
There we
memo,
go.
this is a classic lot split if there ever was one. It's a very large lot in a subdivision that was platted in the 1950s, back when Andover didn't have public sewers. So the lots were made large enough to have septic tanks and lateral fields. This particular lot is even more unusual in that it has frontage on 2 streets. So if you can imagine, all of the public utilities are in both streets. So it just tees itself up perfectly to be lot split, both halves would have access to public utilities with no major extensions. The remaining lot sizes comply with the zoning bulk regulations for the district, so staff's supportive of this, and the owner is here tonight if you have any questions.
Thank you. Any questions of Les?
I do not.
Okay, great. Have anything to say? If they'd like to, they could come to the podium. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry.
Right there. Yep. So anytime someone comes to planning commission, they would come up there and state your name and your address and what you're planning.
Well, my name is Jacqueline Wolf. I own that property. And it just, I would like to make it to where I could build something on the back half to take care of my father. And it just, I'm sorry.
Oh, it's
No,
okay. No, it's
Quite understandable.
yeah.
It just doesn't make sense to keep it empty.
Yeah.
And
You don't have to say any more if you don't want to. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, thanks again. Sorry you're going through whatever you are. Any questions from staff or any concerns of any kind? No?
Now, this is one of the cases that we discussed in subdivision, and it just seems to be perfectly set up to be split, that it works well for the applicant and any future owners of the properties.
Yeah, I agree. In light of that, I'd entertain a motion for approval on this if someone would like to. I'll make the motion. I, Vance Garwood, recommend that we approve the lot split of Lot 6 of the CM Phillips subdivision to the governing body.
I, Gary Israel, second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thanks again for coming. Let's move on to 5.3 then. All right, staff comments there?
This preliminary plat is for a 1 acre lot just across the street here from City Hall. The owner has an 80 acre tract that he wants to split off an acre to give to his family to build another single family dwelling. The surveyor has prepared this preliminary plat with all the information, and we've had a lot of good dialogue back and forth with the applicant and got all of the comments ironed out, and staff has no problem with the approval of the preliminary as it stands.
Only question I would have, Les, would be, have we done this in the past? The planning commission approved knocking off a little piece of property like that.
Oh, we have. There have been various splits of land out in our extraterritorial jurisdiction outside the city limits.
Thank you.
Most have been more acreage than this one, but
Yeah.
this one just happens to have the advantage of having public water and public sewer already on the parcel.
Thank you.
Seems to be quite a bit of work being done on that parcel right now.
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
If you remember, the main house was destroyed by the tornado, and that owner is rebuilding
It
a new
looks
house.
really nice.
Yes.
I want to make sure and mention, I'm going to have to abstain from, the owner is one of my best friends, maybe my best friend. So just want to make sure everyone knows if I don't vote, you know why. I'm not going to make a motion or second it. So yeah, it's a nice place they're building. Really happy for them. It was a rough day 2 years ago when that tornado went right through the middle of their house. Yeah, I went over to that next morning and the concrete shingles were driven into, well, like anybody has seen tornado damage here, driven into the interior doors and walls like, I don't even, like it came out of a cannon. I mean, it was just like tornado damage does. It was unbelievable. And those massive trees that they have all fell over. Sad deal. But this 1 acre approximately is to be able to, for a father-in-law, basically to build a home there is what it is. So, any other comments or questions? No. If not, I'd entertain a motion from somebody else than me.
Mr. Chairperson, I, Gary Israel, make a motion that we approve the Green Meadows property addition preliminary plat.
I, David Pulley, second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion of any kind? No. If not, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. All right, hearing none, the motion passes.
One abstaining.
Yes, right. Vance Garwood abstains. Yep. Thanks, Gary.
Gotta catch you there, secretary.
Yeah, right. Good job.
Way to go.
I don't think I've ever had to abstain before, so. Let's move on to 5.4 then, the Red Bud preliminary planned PUD. And this again is an item that we've seen at least twice, if not 3 times in subdivision. We've talked about quite a bit, so let's move on to 5.4. Go for it. Oh, you're right. Yeah, sorry about that. 6. All right. I now call agenda item 5.4, which is a public hearing on case Z-PUD 24-0001. We would like to welcome everyone interested in this hearing and lay out a few ground rules. It is important that you present any facts or views that you have as evidence so that an informed recommendation can be made by the Planning Commission to the governing body for their final decision. By state statute, the governing body does not have to hold another public hearing on the matter, although they may listen to whomever they wish. You will be asked if there is any new information which was not heard at the hearing. It is to everyone's advantage if you present all the necessary information at this hearing. After the city's zoning administrator provides the commission with background information, I will call upon the applicant. The public comments will be heard following the applicant. Once all have been heard, the applicant will have an opportunity for final comments. The Planning Commission will close the hearing to public comments and they will consider the 14 factors on which to base their recommendation. During this time, the commission may direct questions to the applicant, the public, and/or city staff. You should be aware that the Planning Commission can recommend that the site be platted or replatted if necessary, and that a site plan may be required for approval. You should be aware that any uses permitted outright in a district by the regulations can receive a zoning permit. Furthermore, if the applicant chooses to describe various features of their development plans, the city can only enforce those provisions which are covered in zoning and other city codes. Anyone wishing to speak must be recognized by the chairperson and give their name and address. Please use the podium to speak clearly so that your comments can be recorded for inclusion into our minutes. Before we proceed in the hearing, I'll ask the commission members if any of them intend to disqualify themselves from participating in this case because they or a relative own property in the area of notification or have conflicts of interest.
No.
No.
Okay.
None.
Okay. Official notice for this hearing was published on the City of Andover municipal website on January 27th, 2024, and notices were mailed to the applicant and 20 real property owners of record in the area of notification on January 26th, 2024. The record shows at least 20 days have elapsed between the publication and mailing dates and the hearing date. Unless there is evidence to the contrary from anyone present, I will declare that proper notification has been given. Although we do not encourage such communications, I will ask the commission if any of them have received any ex parte, verbal or written communications prior to this hearing, which they'd like to share.
No.
None.
None. I now call on the city's zoning administrator to provide us with a report on this case.
Mr. Chairman, Planning Commission, this planned unit development is developed in the interest of the owners building a cafe with outdoor seating and play areas adjacent to the Redbud Trail. The location is just a few hundred feet off of the trail, and the applicant has gone to great lengths to make that trail a part of their plan, as well as the proximity to the school district. What they're asking for are some reductions in setbacks, both front and rear, and a modification of the required screening and buffering between this business and some adjacent residences. They've prepared a modified planting plan in lieu of the required 20-foot buffer space between residences and active driveways or the business activity itself. But again, this is geared towards a walkable, bicycle, pedestrian-friendly location in the heart of original Andover, where many of the buildings are much closer to the property lines than modern zoning regulations would allow. You can kind of see that in the aerial photo that Connor's put together there. So staff has spent a lot of time with the applicant and their consultant on this, and the plan before you tonight is to put all of those modifications to the zoning regulations into a planned unit development plan.
Thank you, Les. Any questions from Les? For Les?
So this property was originally planned over 100 years ago, maybe.
Originally, this would have been platted in 1880-ish
Right.
into the old 25-foot piano key lots where a person bought multiple lots. In this case, it is multiple lots, but it's considerably larger than many of those surrounding it. And there was actually kind of a corner convenience store there many, many years ago. You can see the foundation still exists out there. But again, it was in the heart of original Andover. There was a lumber yard and a granary and so forth. Across the street was the original post office, and the bank was down the street just a block.
Any other questions from Les? For Les?
So we're just kind of bringing that current, so to speak, to,
Correct. The applicant is asking for some reductions from today's modern zoning bulk regulations.
that's all I have.
Anybody else? No. I now call upon the applicant to make his or her presentation on the request and any response to the zoning administrator's report.
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Jay Cook. I work for Boffman Company. We're the agent for the applicant. Like Les said, this is a PUD required so that the applicant can have, or our client can have full access of their lot and provide a service right there on the Redbud Trail that'll be exciting for people that use that walkable and bikeable trail. I really appreciate the help from Les and Connor as we've gone through this. Their input has been invaluable, and I'll stand for any questions. Otherwise, he did a great job of explaining what we're asking for.
Thank you. Questions?
Well, Mr. Chairperson, I know that we went over this quite a bit in subdivision. I think staff has done a wonderful job with Boffman Company and meeting the needs of the applicant. I think it'll be a really nice addition. I know one thing that we brought up is that there's really not a suitable place for a monument sign, and we talked about signage on the building, and I said, I can't think of any. And then when I left, just about every building has signage on the building, you know. Treescapes is a great example, you know. So I think it'll be a wonderful addition to that area.
And what Gary is referencing too, for the rest of you that weren't subdivision, is there isn't going to be room to have a monument sign right in front of the building because of it being closer to Andover Road. But again, a lot of the buildings, especially going south there, are much closer to Andover Road than normal regulations, so.
So we're looking at a facade type sign.
Yes, so the 20-foot easement off of Andover was vacated to the city, I believe. Les, is that correct?
Right, there was a right-of-way dedication with the original zoning case that took 20 feet of frontage off of this property to comply with modern minimum standards for Andover Road right-of-way.
So we're asking for a 0-foot right of way. There will be that 20-foot buffer. It just doesn't belong to our client. And that's why we can't have a monument sign right there in front on Andover Road, is because it would be in the right of way. Monument signs are not allowed there. So there will be signs on the building describing what the business is, probably one on each viewable side, to let the patrons know what they've got, what they're doing. And we'll obviously work with Les and on a site plan that has those, that shows that what kind of signs we'll be using.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Thanks for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this case? Oh, yeah. Sometimes I get ahead of myself. It's only my second meeting, you know. I think I'm out of order here. Where are you at, Gary?
So your applicant's final comments.
Yeah.
Oh, written communications.
Aren't I right? Written communications? Is that next? Yeah,
I believe so.
yeah.
Yeah.
So no member of the public, have any written communications been received?
No, Mr. Chairperson.
Okay, I think I'm right. Does the applicant wish to present any final comments? No. Hearing no further public comments, I hereby do close the public portion of the hearing. There will be no further public comments unless the commission wishes to ask questions to clarify information. The Planning Commission will now deliberate the request. There are 14 factors in which the commission must consider in order to make findings and ultimately a recommendation.
Would you like me to read those, Mr. Chairperson?
That'd be great, Gary. Thanks.
Okay. Staff items. Number one, the adequate sewage disposal and water supply and all other necessary public facilities, including street access, exist or can they be provided to serve the uses that would be permitted on the subject property if the change in zoning were approved? Staff has said public facilities are in place and adequate. Number two, if the zoning change request was approved, would the subject property need to be platted or replatted or have in lieu of dedications made in order to provide needed right-of-ways, easements, building setback lines, or access control? Staff has said the subject property is platted and dedications have been made to minimum half-street width on Andover Road. Number three, if the zoning change request was approved, would the subject property need a screening plan for existing or potential uses? Staff, screening and buffering is required. The PUD proposes a modified standard with increased plantings in lieu of setbacks. Number four, What fact-based information in support of or in opposition to the requested zoning change has staff received? Staff has received none at this time. Number 5, if there has been an error in the application of these zoning regulations to the subject property, would the requested zoning change correct the error? Staff says, no error is known to exist. Staff and communications and council items. 6, how suitable or unsuitable is the subject property for its current zoning? Staff comments that the property is suitable for its current zoning. Would concur.
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 Number 7, is the length of time the subject property has been vacant or underdeveloped under its current zoning a factor in the zoning change request? Staff has said no.
Concur.
Concur.
Number 8, how reasonably well suited will the requested zoning change of the subject property be with the current zoning of nearby properties? Staff has commented that with the proposed screening and buffering, the proposed use will be well suited for the location.
Concur.
Concur.
9, excuse me, has the zoning change been requested because conditions in the area of the subject property have changed or are changing? If so, what is the nature and significance of these changes? Staff, the popularity of the Redbud Trail and additions of the Redbud Trail Park have changed the dynamics of the area, bringing hundreds of users to the trail daily.
Concur.
I would concur.
Concur.
Number 10, what are the current land uses, character, and conditions of the subject property and the surrounding neighborhood? Staff, the current land uses in the area are widely mixed with single-family residences to retail and service businesses and a large public school campus. Concur.
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 Number 11, would the proposed zoning change of the subject property allow land uses which might have detrimental effects on nearby properties, and if so, how? Staff, the proposed use will increase the traffic, lighting, activity, etc. over the current vacant lot, but not noticeably increasing the effects of the uses currently permitted.
Concur.
Number 12, how would the requested zoning change conform with the city's comprehensive plan and other adopted master plans and policies? Staff, the comprehensive plan suggests a neighborhood center type, place type, which includes smaller retail and service uses adjacent to the trail orientated corridor.
Concur.
Concur.
13, do any professional persons knowledgeable on conditions that affect this zoning change request have information or recommendations to provide which would be helpful in its evaluation? Staff, approval as presented.
Concur.
Concur.
And number 14, how would the potential loss in value or hardship imposed on the applicant compare to the relative gain to the public health, safety, and welfare if there is a change from the current zone to the requested zone? Staff, no detriment to the public health, safety, and welfare is perceived.
Concur.
Concur.
Thank you, Gary. Having discussed and reached conclusions on our finding of fact, I would remind the commission that a proper motion should reflect the factors on which it is based. And if approval is recommended, then consideration should be given to any conditions that might be attached. Is there a motion to either recommend approval, modification and approval, disapproval, or table the discussion? I can make this motion. Having considered the evidence at the hearing and the factors to evaluate the application, I, Vance Garwood, move that we recommend to the governing body that case number Z-PUD 24-0001 be approved based on the findings of the Planning Commission on findings 8, 9, and 12 as recorded in the summary of this hearing.
I, Gary Israel, second the motion.
Thank you, Gary. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. All right, motion passes. This case will be forwarded to the governing body with the Planning Commission's recommendation and a written summary of the hearing for consideration at their regular meeting of March 12th, 2024. The recording of this hearing will be retained for at least 60 days after the final determination is completed on this case. Protest petitions against the case, but not directed to the commission's recommendations as such, may be received by the city clerk for 14 days after tonight, March 5th, 2024 at 4:30 p.m. If there are properly signed protest petitions with accurate legal descriptions from the owners of record of 20% or more of the total real property owners within the official area of notification, both inside and outside of the city, and not counting public streets of street rights of way or specific statutorily excluded property, then such a change shall not be passed by except by a 3/4 vote of all members on the city council. All right. Very good. All right, we can move on. Let's go ahead and move on then to item 5.5, which is the special use at 855 North Speyside Circle. To my spot. I now call agenda item 5.5, which is a public hearing on case number Z-SU24-0001. It's important that you present any facts or views you have as evidence so that an informed recommendation can be made by the Planning Commission, the governing body, for their final decision. By state statute, the governing body does not have to hold another public hearing on the matter, although they may listen to whomever they wish. You will be asked if there's any new information which was not heard at this meeting. It is to everyone's advantage if you present all of the necessary information at this hearing. After the city's zoning administrator provides the commission with background information, I will call upon the applicant. Public comments can be heard following the applicant. After all speakers have been heard, the applicant will have an opportunity for final comments. The Planning Commission will close the hearing to public comments and will consider the 14 factors on which to base their recommendation. During this time, the commission may direct questions to the applicant, the public, and/or city staff. You should be aware that the Planning Commission can recommend that the site be platted or replatted if necessary, and that a site plan may be required for approval. You should be aware that any uses permitted outright in a district by the regulations can receive a zoning permit. Furthermore, if the applicant chooses to describe various features of their development plans, the city can only enforce those provisions which are covered in zoning and other city codes. Anyone wishing to speak must be recognized by the chairperson and give their name and address. Please use the podium and speak clearly so that your comments can be recorded for inclusion into our minutes. Before we proceed with the hearing, I'll ask the commission members if any of them intend to disqualify themselves from participating in this case because they or a relative own property in the area of notification or have conflicts of interest.
No.
None.
No.
I do have property in Teradyne, but this is not a conflict for me.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Official notice for this hearing was published on the City of Andover Municipal website on January 27th, 2024, and notices were mailed to the applicant and 4 real property owners of record in the area of notification on January 26th, 2024. The record shows at least 20 days have elapsed between the publication and mailing dates and the hearing date. Unless there's evidence to the contrary from anyone present, I will declare the proper notification has been given. Although we do not encourage such communications, I will ask the commission if any of them have received any ex parte verbal or written communications prior to this hearing, which they would like to share.
None.
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 None. I now call on the city's zoning administrator to provide us with a report in this case.
The applicant in this case is one of the owners of the Teradyne Country Club, as well as a partner in the Speyside development. And his desire is to offer one of the 0 lot line homes in Speyside as a short-term rental. You may remember that our UDM in 2018 added short-term rentals that we know as VRBOs and that sort of rental as a special use. In this case, they intend to use it for short-term rental to promote their golf course and provide a place for people to get away and enjoy the golf course.
Thank you. Any questions for Les?
Yeah, short term is defined as approximately how many days?
I have to look at the UDM here if memory is correct. I'm going to say it is 30 days.
I think there was a point last year where that came up too. I think somebody applied for this and somebody on staff pulled up all of the short-term rentals that were actually, remember that, Gary?
Oh, yeah.
All the short, Dave?
Yeah.
So somebody on staff or one of us here pulled up VRBO or Airbnb and saw all of them that were available. And I think there were like 2 that were actually permitted.
Mhm.
Wasn't that the case?
Mhm.
That's loud.
We could probably come back to this.
Borrowed surface. I'll get you that.
That's fine.
Yeah, I know it's somewhere around 30 days. I just wanted to be on the record that we've discussed the number of days. I know it's not 6 months or
Yeah.
anything like that. so.
Applicant or agent may probably even know, but I'll now call upon the applicant to make his or her presentation on the request and any response to the zoning administrator's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Scott Welsh, representing 855 North Speyside Circle. As discussed, this property, we hadn't even really discussed VRBO or Airbnb. This is about the promotion of Teradyne Country Club, whether it be our members bringing guests in, wedding parties that we may book, or maybe most importantly for us, people that were wanting to get to join the country club. So the country club industry is very competitive in this town. And as their general manager, they're now just trying to figure out ways that we can continue to separate ourselves. And that was really to almost offer another club amenity for our members. And that was really the purpose behind it.
Okay.
So
And for
question-
the record, for some weird reason, sorry, I thought it was like 29 days. It's some weird kind of
Yeah,
day, but we'll call it 30.
Call either.
It is no more than 30 days.
No more than 30. Okay.
so would all bookings for this home be through Teradyne Country Club? Or could I book it, just going online somewhere?
The original intention, and it's on our website right now, is to go through Teradyne to make the bookings. Yeah.
Okay,
You have to be sponsored either by one of the owners or by a member to do it,
okay. Then all housekeeping and everything will be done by Teradyne?
by our team at Teradyne.
Very good. Any other questions? Oh, thank you. Any final comments?
I just have another question. If later down the road, we would decide to move it to a VRBO or Airbnb, I'm assuming then we have to come back through the planning commission to then, or is the decision that's made for either or?
It's
The
either, right?
decision that we're discussing tonight is for a short-term rental, which includes VRBO
VRBOs.
or private type rentals.
Okay, and I just want to make sure that I'm clear. So this is to get clearance from like the transient guest tax and those kinds of things, or is that different?
We'll need to talk to the Department of Revenue about that. And we will. We'll be in touch with you on that one.
Okay. Our understanding was if it's a VRBO or Airbnb type thing where we're right there with the hotels, right, that guest tax is there, but because it is a private amenity for our members that could possibly be waived. So we'll wait to hear.
There's debate on the legality of that. We'll be in touch.
Fair enough.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Appreciate you coming. Thanks.
Is this a 1 year grant, basically?
The 1 year term is to get the first permit.
Okay.
Once they have that first permit in hand, it's perpetual and it passes with the ownership of the property.
Is the HOA involved in the administration of that property, or is it purely Teradyne?
The city has nothing to do with homeowners associations. Those are a private contract that we neither enforce.
Anything else? No? Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on the case? Anybody else? All right. Any written communications been received?
No, Mr. Chairperson.
Okay. Does the applicant wish to present any final comments? Okay. Hearing no further public comments, I hereby close the public portion of the hearing. There will be no further public comments unless the commission wishes to ask questions to clarify information. The Planning Commission will now deliberate the request. There are 14 factors which the commission must consider in order to make findings and ultimately a recommendation.
I'd be happy to read those if you
Thank you.
would like.
It'd be great.
Number one, do adequate sewage disposal and water supply and all other necessary public facilities, including street access, exist, or can they be provided to serve the users that would be permitted on the subject property if the change in zoning was approved? Staff response: the subject property is a lot in a recently platted Speyside at Teradyne subdivision. Public water, sewer, and streets are in place and adequate. Number two, if the special use request was approved, would the subject property need to be platted or replatted or have in lieu of dedications made in order to provide needed rights-of-way, easements, building setbacks, lines, or access control? And the response from staff: no platted or dedications are required. Number three, if the special use request was approved, would the subject property need a screening plan or existing or potential for potential uses? And the answer is screening and buffering of residential uses is not required. Number four, what fact-based information in support or in opposition to the requested zoning change has staff received? And the answer, staff has received no information either in support or of or opposed to the requested change. Number five, if there has been an error in the application of these zoning regulations to the subject property, would the requested zoning change correct the error? Answer, no error is known to exist. Number six, how suitable or unsuitable is the subject property for its current use? Answer, the subject property is suitable for its current permitted single-family residential use. Number seven, is the length of time the subject property has been vacant or
I
undeveloped?
concur, sorry.
Yeah. on
I'll
six.
interrupt you there, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
We wouldn't jump in. Go for it.
No, they changed the bottom line there on me. Sorry
Yeah,
about
go
it.
for it.
This is
You're
my
up.
first time.
No,
reading
no,
this,
you're
so you
good.
have
Go
to-
for number 7.
Pardon me. I get excited.
Oh, you're good.
Number 7, is the length of time the subject property has been vacant or underdeveloped under its current zoning a factor in the special use request? And staff says no, the subject property is within the housing development.
Concur.
Concur.
Number 8, how reasonably well suited will the requested special use of the subject property be with the current zoning of nearby properties? Answer, short-term rentals are a widely used product. The applicant is the owner of the Teradyne Country Club and Speyside Development. He intends to use the short-term rental unit as an amenity for golf course users.
Concur.
Concur.
Number 9, has the special use been requested because conditions in the area of the subject property have changed or are changing? If so, what is the nature or significance of these conditions? Staff, no.
Concur.
Concur.
Number 10, what are the current land uses, character, and condition of the subject property and the surrounding neighborhood? Answer, the proposed short-term rental unit is surrounded by other new single-family residences within the Speyside at Teradyne Housing Development.
Concur.
Concur.
Number 11, would the proposed special use of the subject property allow land uses which might have detrimental effects on nearby properties, and if so, how? Response: without proper management and oversight, any transient living arrangement can have detrimental effects. In this case, the applicant owns the surrounding properties and has lots for sale in the development, which lends itself to adequate oversight.
Concur.
Concur.
Number 12, how would the requested special use conform with the city's comprehensive plan and other adopted master plans and policies? Response: the Activate Andover Comprehensive Plan 2024 through 2033 includes several statements promoting Andover as a destination for recreation, entertainment, and attractions. The proposed short-term rental promotes these goals by providing a unique opportunity to experience the Teradyne Country Club. 2021 Strategic Plan Vision Statement: the city of Andover will be an authentic, vibrant community providing economic opportunities and thriving destinations to live, work, learn, and play, quote unquote. Another quote from the plan: Andover aspires to be a complete community that welcomes all people, supports a diverse economy, encourages fun and vibrancy, and integrates the natural environment. Strategy GE plus WO 2.3. Capitalize on the niche opportunity industries. Capitalize on the revenue produced from Andover's unique offerings, such as outdoor recreation amenities, and expand the variety of potential attractions. And finally, strategy GE plus WO 2.4. Incentivize district attractions. Encourage the development or creation of unique destinations, dining, shopping, attractions, events, entertainment, and places that appeal to the locals and attract visitors from throughout the region.
Concur.
Concur.
Number 13, do any professional persons knowledgeable on conditions that affect this special use request have information or recommendations to provide which would be helpful in its evaluation? Staff, approval has been applied for.
Concur.
Concur.
And 14, how would the potential loss in value or hardship imposed on the applicant compare to the relative gain to the public health, safety, and welfare if there is a change from the current use to the requested use? Staff, no loss to the public health, safety, or welfare is perceived.
Concur. Thank you.
Mr. Chairperson, I have one more question for the applicant. So right now, all bookings, if you want to come to the podium. Sorry to make you run around.
That's right. I can use the extra steps.
Anyway, right now, you're looking at using this as an amenity to coming out to the country club. And I would imagine that anybody who comes out who books through the country club would have access to all the amenities at the club?
Not all of them.
Okay. Okay. And would the same hold true if you turned it over to an Airbnb or whatever it is? Would they have any access, or would it be dependent on the person and what they're paying for?
Yeah, they would have limited access, and that being the golf course and the restaurant, but they still wouldn't be able to access the pool or the tennis or any of those other true member amenities.
Yeah, the only reason I ask that is I've rented condos out in, Utah and stuff, and you had access to everything.
Sure.
And if all of a sudden I go to play tennis and I get run off because I don't have access, I might be a little upset.
Sure.
And want to take it out on, I'm just looking at worst case scenarios, because we want to keep that a nice area. We want to keep the country club, viable and attractive to people. So you guys will just have to manage all that.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks again. All right. Yeah, Having discussed and reached conclusions or finding of fact, I'd remind the commission that a proper motion should reflect the factors on which it is based. And if approval is recommended, the consideration should be given to any conditions that might be attached. Is there a motion to either recommend approval, modification and approval, or disapproval, or to table the discussion? You got it, Gary?
Sure. David's going to do it.
Having considered the evidence of the hearing and the factors to evaluate the application, I, David Foley, move that we recommend to the governing body that case number Z-SU24-0001 be approved. Based on the findings of the planning commission on findings, is that
8, 10, and 12.
always 8, 10, and 12, as recorded in the summary of this hearing, and that the following condition, I guess that doesn't apply, does it? Motion seconded by?
I, Gary
second.
Israel, second the motion.
Thank you, Gary. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion at all? No? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Motion carried. This case will be forwarded to the governing body with the Planning Commission's recommendation and a written summary of the hearing for consideration at their regular meeting of March 12th, 2024. The recording of this hearing will be retained for at least 60 days after the final determination is completed on this case. Protest petitions against the case, but not directed to the Commission's recommendations as such, may be received by the city clerk for 14 days after tonight, which is March 5th, 2024 at 4:30 p.m. If there are properly signed petition protests with accurate legal descriptions from the owners of record of 20% or more of the total real property owners within the official area of notification, both inside and outside of the city, and not counting public streets or specific statutorily excluded property, then such a change shall not be passed except by a 3/4 vote of all members of the city council. All right, thank you. Let's move on to 5.6. Gotta get there. All right. I now call agenda item 5.6, which is public hearing on case number Z-SU23-0006. It's important that you present any facts or views you have as evidence so that an informed recommendations can be made by the Planning Commission to the governing body for their final decision. By state statute, the governing body does not have to hold another public hearing on the matter, although they may listen to whomever they wish. You'll be asked if there is any new information which is not heard at this hearing. It is to everyone's advantage if you present all necessary information at this hearing. After the city's zoning administrator provides the commission with background information, I will call upon the applicant. If deemed necessary, the public hearing may be reopened to take new evidence. Public comments may or may not be heard following the applicant. After all speakers have been heard, the applicant will have an opportunity for final comments. If the public hearing is reopened, the Planning Commission will close the hearing to public comments and then will reconsider their recommendation. During this time, the commission may direct questions to the applicant, the public, and/or city staff. You should be aware that any uses permitted outright in a district by the regulations can receive a zoning permit. Furthermore, if the applicant chooses to describe various features of their development plans, the city can only enforce those provisions which are covered in zoning and other city codes. If the public hearing is reopened, anyone wishing to speak must be recognized by the chairperson and give their name and address. Please use the podium and speak clearly so that your comments can be recorded for inclusion into our minutes. Before we proceed with the hearing, I'll ask the commission members if any of them intend to disqualify themselves from participating in this case because they or a relative own property in the area of notification or have any conflicts of interest.
No.
No.
Official notice for this hearing was published on the City of Andover Municipal website on December 23rd, 2023, and notices were mailed to the applicant and 15 real property owners of record in the area of notification on December 22nd, 2023. The record shows that at least 20 days have elapsed between the publication and the mailing dates and the hearing date. Unless there is evidence to the contrary from anyone present, I will declare that the proper notification has been given. Although we do not encourage such recommendations, I will ask the commission if any of them have received any ex parte verbal or written communications prior to this hearing, which they would like to share.
None.
None.
I will now call on the city zoning administrator to provide us with a report on this case.
At your meeting last month, you made a recommendation on this case. That recommendation went on up to the city council for their consideration of an ordinance granting this special use. The city council has returned this case to the planning commission for further consideration, and more particularly, further consideration of that question number 4 regarding the effects of public health and safety in the area. You have a few choices in how you can respond to that case being returned. You can submit a new or amended recommendation, or you can simply do nothing and return the original recommendation. And I think in this case, the applicant is here and has more information to offer to you for your consideration of that question that the city council has returned.
Thank you, Les. Do you have any questions of Les so far?
Not as yet.
It states it a little bit. What was the city council's primary concern?
The effects on the public health and safety in the area.
Les, I would bring up, they did also talk about the surrounding neighborhood, item 10 and item 12 as well, how it fit with the city's comprehensive plan. I think we have a better comprehensive plan map in your packet that was not in their packet, but probably should touch on all 3 of those areas because 10, 12, and 14 were all specifically mentioned.
Okay. Anything else first, Les or staff, before we hear from the applicant? I now call upon the applicant to make his or her presentation on the request and in response to the zoning administrator's report.
Good evening. Better weather here this time. Number 10.
Would you mind stating your name, please?
Oh, forgive me. Frank Brader, JD Winston LLC. Number 10, to address the 3 topics that were brought up. Number 10 and number 11, I don't think I'm really qualified to speak to with regards to the public, what's in the record
Sure.
of the city, right? I can opine, but obviously it's in a medical mixed use area. My clarity, or I want to bring some clarity really to number 14, which I think I can first address by saying what the facility is not, so that there's a clear understanding. The facility is not a clinic. It is not a place where someone would walk in, for example, and get methadone on a daily basis and walk out. It is not a walk-in clinic to in any way, shape, or form receive Suboxone or methadone or any of these drugs used in detoxification. It is a 30-day, as we call it, right? And that's not carved in stone, but it's basically a 30-day rehab. It is not a walk-in clinic. So really, for any misunderstandings, that's the first thing I wanted to really be clear on. This is not something where someone's going to come on a daily basis. This is a place where they're going to go to of their own volition for a good period of time. Whether they travel here from out of town or they come from within the state, this is a place that they'll reside at for a period of time under that supervision of medical care. So there is psychiatric staff on hand, medical nurses on hand, RNs and LPNs, and really the liability of the facility itself with regards to any discharge or AMA, as we use the acronym, for someone who decides to leave against medical advice. That would be someone who came to the program, you know, committed to coming to rehab, and 7 days later they said, this is not for me. And they would leave against medical advice. That is not as easy as it sounds to do, although no one is held against their will. Obviously, the therapist speaks to them, the psychiatrist addresses these things. And should they wish to AMA, they are not put on the street with a bag of clothes. They are either transported to the airport to return from whence they came under the care of technicians, or their loved ones, friends, someone who's going to take responsibility from one hand to the other. They're not going to be discharged into the street, so to speak, right? Because there's going to be a liability not only on the facility at that point, but also the doctor whose care they're under. So we're in any situation, which, by the way, as I had stated earlier, and this is one of the points with regards to an AMA, statistically speaking, AMAs happen about 1% of the time. So, you know, you can see it's always significant when someone chooses to leave a rehab, right? But it's a fairly insignificant number in the big picture. But even in those cases, they are discharged into the care of someone. They are not disposed of, so to speak, right? So again, the clarity between what we're not or what we do not intend this to be, which is a walk-in daily clinic for any methadone or outpatient treatment in that regard, versus the care of an AMA or a early discharge. But I welcome any questions from the board.
Who has questions?
So to just clarify and summarize, if somebody relieves themselves of treatment, they basically have to have somebody that they're transferring care to, an individual, family member, what have you, and the doctor is usually there to sign them out and make sure everything.
Absolutely, but also discuss that with the family members.
Right.
When someone in a situation like this, I've never even, it would be an extremely rare occasion where someone with no family or friend, they drive up to a rehab to check themselves in, and no one else in their life is aware of what's going on. Even their insurance company would know what was going on. So there would be a loved one, a husband, a wife, a mother, you know, involved in the care. So everything along the process is communicated with the family. Weekends are visitation days. You'd be surprised. People fly in just to see their son they haven't seen in 2 weeks, you know, and they come to check out the place. So the communication between staff and the family members of those patients is pretty robust, so that they're going to be aware of the situation well before anybody would be discharged.
Thank you. I appreciate that, your thorough explanation.
Thank you.
I have a question. So it's not an outpatient,
No,
daily outpatient.
no,
Will you still administer the drugs like methadone and?
no, there'd be no methadone treatment at the facility. The only detoxification drug that may be used is Suboxone. Generally, that's used for about 3 days to taper off a heavy opioid addict.
Mhm.
But detoxification is generally a week-long process. So even the drug would only be used for about half that time. The only drug for those, because I'm pretty well versed in this, I've owned a few facilities myself. The only drug you can actually die from in detox or in withdrawal is alcohol. That's the only drug you can die from. So even the old timers of AA used to carry bottles of booze around with them when they helped people off the streets, because when you go into a shock, you can actually die, but you cannot die from a heroin withdrawal or a cocaine withdrawal or anything of this nature. But the certain drugs, the heaviest being Suboxone, is used in a taper system, but for a short period of time.
So there will not be drugs like that on the premises then? You
There
said
would be Suboxone,
Suboxone.
yes, but not methadone.
Not methadone.
Methadone is a maintenance program
Mhm.
for those that just want to, and this is my opinion, okay? And I'm not a doctor, but generally when you want to come off heroin and maintain a lifestyle that's at least conducive to work and home, but you're not completely coming off the opioids, the methadone is generally a transition, but it's usually a year or two, if not longer. And that's a maintenance program, not a detoxification program.
What would you say the majority of your clients would be in there for treatment of? Would it be opioid or alcoholism?
Today, since we unfortunately, it would be about half and half.
Yeah.
Be about half opioids, half alcohol.
Is the, I assume there has to be a licensed psychiatrist on,
Yes,
is he on premises or is he just on staff?
he's on staff and would be at the facility a minimum of 2 times a week.
And it's a
There's
local,
also a medical director and a director of nursing.
okay, and the psychiatrist obviously is a local, Wichita. or-
Usually, yes,
Yeah.
because they have to be available.
Thank you.
Okay. I've got a list of questions, unfortunately. So first, will people seeking treatment receive room and board and be staying overnight?
Yes.
Okay. While they're staying overnight, what is in place to keep them in the facility? Or are they free to leave the facility anytime they'd like? Let's say it's 10 o'clock and they decide, oh, they want to go across the street to Walgreens and get.
Yeah,
you
no,
know, pop.
that's not going to happen. You would have to be discharged as if from a hospital. You would have to discharge yourself, and that would bring in the medical staff. Are you free to discharge yourself? Yes, but are you free to simply walk out the front door and go get a pack of cigarettes at Walgreens? No, that is not the case.
Okay,
The
so.
door's locked.
Doors are locked at night. Yes.
And do you have security in place then, in case somebody tries
There's
to break the
there's
doors?
staff 24/7,
Okay,
365.
okay. How many people are you looking at staying at this facility?
Approximately 60 to 75, depending on what the license is issued by the state.
Okay,
This was a licensed 74 bed, if I'm not mistaken, facility. So if 74 beds is what the state will license, then that would be the maximum capacity.
okay. And how many staff that, if you were at maximum 74, how many staff members would be there during the day and how many in the during the night?
You would have approximately 33% staff for during the day for per client. So 7 times 3 is 21. So about 20 staff during the day, but I'm also including marketers, kitchen staff, janitorial, full staff. And then in the evenings, you would have probably about a dozen techs and a nurse on staff around overnight.
Okay. Let's see. What rules will you have in place concerning drinking, noise, visitors, and so forth?
Visitation is on weekends and
Okay.
it's limited to immediate family. There are HIPAA laws in place. People just can't walk in and sit down with clients.
So it's limited to family only for visitations?
Family and approved guests that, for example, if I had a girlfriend, but I wasn't married, that type of situation that's approved by not only the patient themselves, you know, to come and visit, and approved generally by the staff. They speak to them beforehand. Visitation is weekends.
So I'm in the facility and my girlfriend has approval to come and she's sneaking me in
If you give
drugs,
her approval,
but she's bringing in controlled substances. How do you guys control that?
it's not a prison,
I know it's not a prison, but you're asking us as a community.
right? I understand that. I understand that. Visitation is, first of all, not private, right? So if a girlfriend was to come to visit, there's no conjugal visits, so to speak. There is public space. That would be, and drug tests are taken on the premises. So you get a drug test when you come in, and periodically, obviously a couple times a week, if any spike, you know, it would only go down if you weren't using,
Yeah.
right? So if it spiked up after a visit, obviously then that would be an indication. Could I stop someone from bringing something in? No, there's no search and seizure procedure, but again, it's in public and it's with approved guests.
Okay. So how many facilities do you have like this, or does the applicant have?
2,
2? So this would be number 3?
correct.
Okay. And what kind of, have you had any conflicts with neighbors or in other communities where you have those locations?
No, actually. The one location is in Florida
Okay.
and another location is in Texas. And there has been no issues with surrounding area or anything like that. One is 77 beds and one is 28.
Is there testimonials you can provide from those facilities?
Is there what? I'm sorry?
Testimonials or recommendations from
The
those-
owner.
from
He was
those
supposed to be here tonight. His name is Mr. Lind, Ari Lind. And unfortunately, he got called away to Arizona. So he anticipates coming to the next meeting. But he literally canceled on me this morning. I was
It's
at the
beautiful
airport.
weather too.
I was at the airport. I get the text.
I know we have a fine police force in this town. The objective would be not to increase the workload.
No, we don't want to burden them. And in fact, we'd have no problem meeting with them. You know what I mean? The safety of the patients is of utmost concern to us,
100% agree. 100% agree.
you know? So most definitely, we don't want visitors at 10 o'clock at night, like Mr. Israel, you know, said any off hour things like this it's a controlled environment. As much as they're not, you know, bound. I mean, like I said, it's not a prison, but it's a controlled environment. And really, for the most part, and I mean this statistically speaking and from my own experience, people want to be there, otherwise they wouldn't be there. This is a choice, right? If a court does, and I think I said this at the last meeting, even if a court orders a defendant after a DUI to go to rehabilitation, they don't pick the facility. The patient still picks the facility. And even under a court order, they're allowed to AMA, report back to the court and potentially go to another facility. but it's not, you know, a lockdown situation. Is it a controlled environment? Of course. But is it a lockdown prison type facility? No.
And would the residents, would they have transportation?
No.
Personal, or would there be any provided by the facility?
Yes, the techs would drive any airport runs back and forth, any, they might even do special events outside. I know in Florida, sometimes they take clients to the beach and they have a 12-person van with 2 techs that go to the beach, and they bring an acoustic guitar and they have a meeting and they stay, and they're allowed on a Saturday afternoon to do an activity, and then they come back under supervision.
Because I can imagine, you know, I'm staying there and I run out of clothing, you know, or something happens and I need to go buy some. I mean, is somebody going to take me to the mall or to go shopping, or?
Most likely they'll go for you.
Okay.
But yeah, I was in a PHP IOP program, which is not a facility where a PHP IOP program is a different model. It's where you live actually separate of where you get the treatment, right? It's called the Florida model. And so every morning you left your apartment, techs brought you into the van, you drove to the facility, you spent 7 hours at the facility, and then they drove you back, and then they take you to AA meetings at night and come back to the facility. So there was frequent moving about, and we went to Publix on Saturdays, you know, with a budget, and tech comes with you. They check everything you buy. So this is a campus model rather than a Florida model. So everything's there, but any activity or any movement is obviously under supervision.
Yeah, I'm just asking these questions because, yeah, I wasn't in city council when they sent it back to us, and I'm just thinking of things that they might have considered, you know, so. In the last meeting, you know, we did approve this, you know,
Yeah.
as a planning commission, so. Les?
Sure. As Jenny mentioned, there was some discussion about the surrounding neighborhood, and one of the questions came up after the meeting was how many notices were sent out and who were they sent to? There were 15 notices that were sent out. 8 of those went to single-family residences that are within the 200-foot notification. So adequate notice has been served. The other comments about the comprehensive plan, how a clinic or a facility fits into the comprehensive plan. This area is in a city center place type, which has a whole host of activities. Large-scale tenants, restaurants, commercial retailers, mixed-use, small-scale office, mixed-use buildings, intense, diverse place where a higher intensity of mixture of uses exists. Housing may be in this place type as a complementary use like workforce housing to support the area. Commercial uses include drive-through restaurants, small and mid-sized commercial uses typical of the city corridor place type can be highly desirable supporting uses. So it's intended to be a much more intense mixture of uses and effects of the uses, lighting, traffic, pedestrians. But in this case, like Mr. Bader has explained to you, this is a inpatient situation, not an outpatient. So the comings and goings to this facility will be minimal.
Yes, it sounds like it's going to be highly regulated. It's not a prison,
Correct.
but.
And
things
again,
to
it's
watch.
regulated by the state licensing authority, CARF, JACO. There are other federal agencies involved for accreditations that do inspections, not only of clinical records, but the physical plan itself.
I don't think I've, since I've been on the commission, we've never had anything returned from the city council. It's probably happened before many times, just not since I've been on it. So as to not have this happen again, if it's approved now, are there specific questions city council could ask and they could be replied to in a written form? Or how are their concerns best answered without us just pushing it, approving it again?
They've been somewhat specific. If your action, if you choose to submit a amended recommendation, you could go back through those specific questions, 10, 12, and 14, and talk about it and decide if you want to amend your recommendation on those specific questions that were of concern and some discussion.
If I may also, I think they really wanted to just ensure that those things were specifically thought through. So I also think that minutes that reflect that this conversation happened centered around these areas, I think that will go some way towards what those concerns were.
Okay. There definitely is more detail at this meeting discussed than the prior one, but the overall purpose and scope of what you're planning to do, I think we understood. At least I felt like I did last time. Yeah. Do you feel like they reviewed the minutes pretty well prior to the meeting, or did they know much about this at the time?
I would just say, I think if the applicant can have somebody present at that council meeting so that if they have questions and can ask them in real time, I think that will go a
I will
long
be
way.
there.
Thank you.
I'm going to get some frequent flyer miles.
Yeah, hate to make you do that, but this is a
No,
unique case for us.
Listen,
We
our
haven't
concern
done
is
this
your
before.
concern.
Yeah.
I want
think,
I want a level of comfort hand in hand with the community. Otherwise, this won't work.
So
And it won't work for you, and then it wouldn't work for us. You know what I mean? This is in a way, cliche as it sounds, a quasi partnership that, there are going to be people in the community, the doctors, the hospitals, the nurses, the clients, the patients from the community employed here. We're aware of this, coming here, right? So it's not like we're hiding under a rock. But I'm also not waving a big red and white dive flag. We're not putting up a 60-foot flagpole either. There is a degree of discretion, as I mentioned, HIPAA laws, but also, again, the community can benefit from this in numerous ways. And safety, like was mentioned earlier, we want that as much as you want that. Otherwise, the business, it's still a business, and the business doesn't thrive on anyone getting hurt.
He
agreed.
doesn't thrive on negative comments.
I think the main concern of the city council, some of the questions was a methadone clinic in Crescent Lakes is what the general consensus was. And you cleared that up for us. It is not a methadone clinic.
Yeah, that's why I literally prefaced everything else
Yes.
with that. Let's get to what it's not. And,
Yes.
and that's as important as what it is.
I think it's a very important service you're providing. And as long as people understand clearly that it's not a methadone clinic because you watch too many Netflix documentaries and whatever,
I have one other question. Who pays? Does the client or insurance or?
98% is generally private insurance
Okay.
for the private pay. If this were to be Medicaid approved, then there could be that component. That's generally not the majority because unfortunately Medicaid pays the least of any, right, payer. And in a very rare occasion, you know, a dad will foot the bill cash, but that's, generally speaking, we're talking about private insurance.
And I can't imagine it's cheap.
No, this would run anywhere from $20,000 to $30,000 per month, generally speaking. An in-network situation, in-network with, and that's what, you know, might probably be preferred in a situation like this. So you have contracts with the insurance company, so you have a stable population.
Any more questions? I really appreciate you coming to clarify.
Yeah.
Thank you
I
for
don't know where you're from, but I'm sure it's a long ways.
Palm Beach County, Florida.
Yeah, long ways. Well, thanks for coming. I appreciate you being here for the city council too when it comes around.
Yes, thank you.
Don't hesitate.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The planning commission may or may not reopen the public hearing. If the public hearing is reopened, are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this case? Any written communications been received?
No, Mr. Chairperson, not in the original notification period nor since.
Thank you. If new public comments have been received, does the applicant wish to, yeah, never mind. If the public hearing has been reopened, I hereby close the public portion of the hearing. There will be no further public comments unless the commission wishes to ask clarifying questions. The planning commission will now deliberate the recommendation. The 14 factors may be considered or only the finding and factors specifically returned by the governing body in order to make findings and ultimately a recommendation. All right, I can do these. Is that saying that we're only reviewing the ones that they returned to us rather than all of them? Am I not reading that correctly?
It's your choice. You can review the entire recommendation or you can respond to just those 3 items.
10, 12, and 14, correct?
Yes.
What's everybody think? To me, those are the items.
Yeah,
Those
just
are
do
the
those.
items.
That's the way I think. So
10, 12, 14.
yeah, I will go ahead and read those then. What are the current land uses, character, and condition of the subject property and the surrounding neighborhood? Staff, the surrounding land uses are widely mixed with widely mixed with mixed commercial, institutional, and residential uses. Planning,
Concur.
Yeah, and it was a nursing home at one time, a care facility. We're not building anything new.
right?
Unfortunately, Crescent Lakes backs up to that area.
Well, security was probably a little different for the nursing home
Oh, yeah.
than this facility, but I believe those questions were answered.
I concur.
Concur.
12, how would the requested special use conform with the city's comprehensive plan and other adopted master plans and policies? Staff, the surrounding land uses are widely mixed as proposed in the future city center place type. The proposed use fits within the cluster of existing medical/institutional uses and commercial activity. Planning Commission.
Concur.
I concur.
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 We concur with that. And unfortunately, in today's society, we have a huge increase in the use of drugs and mental health issues. And we have very few facilities that really address those things adequately.
Well, I know this isn't a land use, but something that was talked about in the comprehensive planning is, more jobs in the community. And I mean, probably none out of there right now. There'll be 20 to 30. Sounds like jobs, 60 jobs. So to me, that's a factor, even though land use is probably discussed most in the comprehensive planning. 14, how would the potential loss in value or hardship imposed on the applicant compare to the relative gain to the public health, safety, and welfare if there is a change from the current use to the requested use? Staff, Staff perceives no detriment to the public health, safety, and welfare created by the minor change in use. Planning Commission.
I do have a question, Jenny. If they're meeting all state statutes and things that are required for licensing, and there are infractions on that, I mean, the facility can be shut down, correct? But as long as they're working within the limits of the law and doing everything they're supposed to, I mean, they have the right to have a business.
I feel like the answer is yes. To be very clear, the city doesn't do those licensing, so we also
Yeah.
would not be the ones that would control whether or not somebody's violating their state license. So that would be up to, I'm guessing, somebody through Kansas Department of Health and Environment. Maybe,
If I may, though,
absolutely.
Physical plan is inspected by the city. So in that regard, fire.
Building codes,
right,
sure.
building code, to get a certificate of occupancy.
Sure.
Those things are within the purview of the city, but also go hand in hand. Should the facility lose any of those approvals, the license is at risk. So in that way, it's, to the
But
physical plan, yes.
much like Kansas Medical Center, we have nothing to do with their licenses that allow them to practice medicine and offer an emergency room and things like that. That's between them and some boards at the state level.
It's more the occupancy.
Correct.
Yeah.
But to the point made here, if there is a problem with the building and we would, for whatever
Sure.
reason, take those certificates of occupancy,
Yep.
that would impact
Right,
those
that
licenses as
jeopardizes
well.
license
Understood.
or destruction.
Well, let's say that the police were called out there 2 or 3 times a day on a regular basis. That would seem to be quite a concern for,
That
What's-
that would jeopardize the license as well, because it would be, every single report would be reported, right? Every single police report
okay,
would
yeah.
be reported to state agencies, and they would basically wonder what was going on down there, so to speak, you know what I mean? So they would immediately come out, and these things have not occurred. I would be, obviously, it would be disingenuous to say they didn't occur, but few and far between. And in that regard, again, reported and a cure period, but the state would be aware.
okay.
Thank
Yeah, I
you.
mean, unfortunately, we have domestic violence cases and police have been called to my neighborhood,
Yeah.
So,
So for 14, do we concur?
I think what the council was asking for was for you to expand on those effects, if any. And I think Mr. Bader's kind of provided you some information about that it's an inpatient facility, that people are checked in and they stay within 4 walls
Yeah.
for a period of time. It's not a clinic environment where there are walk-ups or daily situations. It's a longer period where a person is admitted.
yeah, again, it's not a prison, but there's enough staff to watch over and try to protect your clients and patients.
365.
So there's basically a buffer,
Yeah,
so I think maybe that's what the city council was worried about, that there wasn't a buffer.
I think it's been
You
well
know.
clarified, and I personally concur. Everyone else?
Concur.
I concur.
Concur.
Okay. Having discussed and reached conclusions on our finding of fact, I would remind the commission that a proper motion should reflect the factors on which it is based. And if approval is recommended, the consideration should be given to any conditions that might be attached. Is there a motion to either recommend approval, modification and approval, disapproval, or to table a discussion? You got that, Gary?
yeah, having considered the evidence at the hearing and the factors to evaluate the application, I, Gary Israel, move that we submit a revised recommendation to the governing body that case number Z-SU23-0006 be approved based on the findings of the Planning Commission on the findings of 10, 12, and 14 as discussed this evening, and that the applicant, Mr. Frank, I'm sorry, Brader will be in attendance at the city council meeting when this comes up.
Thank you, Gary. We have a second?
I second.
All right, we have a motion, a second. All those in favor, aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thanks for coming again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So you got to read your last statement.
Yeah.
there.
This recommendation will be returned to the governing body with the planning commission's recommendation and a written summary of the hearing for consideration at the regular meeting of February 27th, 2024. The recording of this hearing will be retained for at least 60 days after the final determination is completed on this case. Thanks again.
And thank
you.
you.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairperson, I make a motion that we recess the planning commission and convene the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Thank you, Gary. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second it.
All right, we have a motion, a second. All those in favor of recess of the motion, recessing the planning commission and convening the Board of Zoning Appeals, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Let's move on to 5.7.
If you remember, you continued this case from the last meeting to hear from the applicant about his use of the proposed use of the property. And we don't see the applicant in the audience tonight. Connor tells me he's been in contact with that applicant and has not had any conversations that the applicant would not be here tonight. So the choice is yours, whether you continue this again or act without the input of the applicant.
Well, to me, nothing's changed. And it's not here. I
Yeah.
mean,
I, Gary Israel, make a motion that we table, dang, I lost my brain.
it'd be,
The variance for 115 West Allison Street
Yeah.
until the applicant can be present.
thank
I
you.
second it.
Second by Dave.
Definitely.
All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. So he understands he was supposed to be here for, I guess.
Yeah, it was my understanding that he would be here.
Okay.
Maybe something came up. I don't know. I didn't hear.
All right. Thanks. Any member items?
Yeah, I'd just like to say staff does a great job.
Yeah.
A wonderful job. It makes what we do much easier. And it is a pleasure to work with.
Yeah. Thank you. Sometimes I stumble or we stumble through stuff up here. Appreciate you guys keeping us in line.
I second that.
We'll do better every meeting. Next year will be flawless.
That's all I had.
Gentlemen down there,
We're good.
anything else? No? All right. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Mr. Chairperson, I believe you need to adjourn the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Oh, that's right.
Sorry
So,
about that.
Mr. Chairperson, I, Gary Israel, make a motion that we adjourn the Board of Zoning Appeals and reconvene the Planning Commission. That's staff.
That's right.
I'll
Thank you. Thank
second
you.
it.
Have a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. So no member items then?
That was it.
So now we need a motion to adjourn, I believe, right? To keep this even?
Yeah.
Gentlemen?
Um,
Peter?
I motion that we adjourn the meeting.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn the meeting. Have a second?
Second.
He said.
There was a second
Second.
right here.
All right.
David Foley.
All right, we got one, no matter what. Motion a second. All those in favor of adjourning the meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All right, meeting adjourned.
So